All right. Welcome to the Vet Podcast. I'm Stephen Hermann.
I'm Kale Flaspohler.
And we've got a guest on today, Dr. Peter Weinstein, who probably doesn't need a whole lot of introduction in the veterinary community. But there might be a few people that may not know you, surprisingly enough. But I mean, I started writing an introduction and it goes like here to here. And by no means am I going to read this verbatim. But let's start off, get a little bit going here. You're not just a seasoned veterinarian, but a true leader, innovator, and visionary in the veterinary profession. Your career journey began humbly as a kennel kid. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And he has since made an indelible impact across virtually every facet of veterinary medicine. Dr. Weinstein earned his DVM from the University of Illinois and later went on to complete his MBA at the University of Redlands. Blending his love for animals with sharp acumen for business, his entrepreneurial spirit led him to write the acclaimed book, The E-Myth Veterinarian, which has inspired countless veterinarians to view practice ownership through a new lens, transforming their practices into thriving, sustainable businesses. Beyond the book, he's been the executive director of the Southern California Veterinary Medical Association, past chair of the AVMA Economic Strategy Committee, and a passionate teacher of business and finance at Western University College of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Weinstein is a devoted family man. He's a proud husband and father, with his daughter Brooke recently graduating as a veterinarian herself in 2023 from Oregon State. His personal journey as a father and professional is deeply intertwined, and it's clear that his dedication to the veterinary profession extends beyond himself to inspire the next generation. Also, he has a podcast, like we do here. Podcasts are great, a lot of fun. Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, where he dives into thought-provoking discussions about societal issues, leadership, and the veterinary field. Hey, we're excited to have you on today. I'm reading that. It's rare looking around and going, the guy's sticking to a script. He's normally all over the place. But no, that's just the short list. There's more things on there. And you have another child, 2 children. And so I mentioned the one's a veterinarian. So your other child, too. We should throw out on that.
First of all, that brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't have done a better job myself. So thank you. Thank you. Can I have you come around with me and introduce me at meetings around the country?
Heck yeah, I'd love to. It'd be fun.
Brianna has a business degree from the University of Southern California. She is currently in Austin, Texas. She's a sales manager for NetSuite's software, which is part of the Oracle family, and has been very successful in sales and been very successful in life. So I like to think that I have had 2 home runs with my kids, that when I get old, they can take care of me. And measures of success are they're off the payroll and out of the house.
I love it. We just had a recording with a veterinarian who just sold a practice to a private, and we help with that transition. And he said, my kids are financially independent. That is a success. So I think that's what, and can later take care of him. So I love hearing that. Hey, real quick, you're in the LA area, correct? How are things?
All right, so I'm fortunately 50 miles south of where the worst of the burns are.
Okay.
It was a distressing, debilitating, just a really difficult time when you know the people, you know the area, you see areas that you've been to up in flames. Tremendous amount of history, tremendous amount of people disrupted and moved, and weather had a lot to do with it. We think of forest fires, quote unquote, but we really don't think of urban fires. But this was really a very highly packed urban area in Pacific Palisades, up in the Altadena and Pasadena area, in the Hollywood Hills. But it was kind of the perfect storm, with the fact that we haven't had any rain in like 6 months, winds of 60, 70, 80 miles an hour coming down from the canyons. And even though these homes are right on the water, you would think that that would make them less likely to burn, but it doesn't matter when it's dry. The winds are dry, and we haven't had any rain to support it for a period of time. So there's still a concern. The winds have been coming up and down. I mean, not to give you a weather forecast, but we've been kind of in the low 60s with winds. Now we're going to go back up to the 80s with winds, which means they're going to be warm winds. So even though I'm 50 miles away from the most recent fires, it has not been that long since I had ash on my car from fires in the Orange County areas. And San Diego is under a fire alert as well because of the winds that are down there. So it's part of the four seasons of California:
Mhm.
fire, flood, earthquake, and drought.
Well, I think what complicates it, obviously, the wind, you can't dump the water either. They can't take the tankers and dump the water. So that's been a huge issue with mitigating the spread of it because the dumping of the water is really not to put the fire out, to stop the fire from continuing to spread, really
Right.
to lay down the line. So how's the veterinary community doing?
I think we're very California, because we're so used to disasters in many different ways, has a very strong support network between in Los Angeles, the Southern California VMA, the California VMA, the California Veterinary Medical Foundation, which is part of the CVMA, whose funding is there to help support disasters. Veterinarians are very helpful to one another in these situations. We will take clients from another veterinarian and help provide them with care. We will host. We won't hose them. We'll host
We're talking about
them.
fires. We're going to put the fire
Yeah,
out with the hose and
yes, I
host
think
it.
that's where my head
Yeah.
was. We'll host veterinarians at our facility so they can provide care for their clients. I would suggest that the term competitor is not part of the veterinary vocabulary,
Absolutely.
but colleague and collaborator, especially in the face of these types of challenges. So a big shout out to all of the efforts of the Southern California VMA, the California VMA, and I know Vin has actually helped financially as well. There's a whole litany of groups that are working together to help with the pets that have been need to be rehomed or rehoused,
Mhm.
and the clients that need help. And I give a big shout out to all my colleagues for being just that, which is colleagues.
Wonderful. Is there any dedicated website to go to? Do you go to the California VMF or to donate? What's the best way to help out?
I think you can go to the California VMF website and then the Southern California VMA. I haven't checked our website recently, but I know that they're doing some fundraising as well with Vin. So CVMF and the Southern California VMA would probably be the two primary locations from that standpoint. And if you want anything, I can probably get you some links afterwards that you can host on the website.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Let's get that out there, and definitely would. Our hearts and prayers go out to everyone out there. It is a tragedy, and Mother Nature is going to do what Mother Nature is going to do, and we have to come together as a community, and it's just the way it seems like the world can work, right? That a tragedy brings people together, and sometimes, unfortunately, that's what it takes. So we're thinking about y'all for sure, for sure. I know I've got a friend in Burbank, and in kind of in the middle of the fires, right? But he's back. So the skies were clear, but they're showing a red alert. So we're thinking about y'all. Okay, we could talk the whole thing about this, but let's keep rolling. Okay, so yeah, opening question, right? What inspired you to enter veterinary medicine, right? From you, I got that right. The kennel, you're a kennel kid, to veterinarian.
So I grew up in the James Herriot era. All Creatures Great and Small came out when I was in probably middle school,
Okay.
junior high, whatever we called it back then.
Yeah, yeah.
I grew up with cats. My mom was a biology teacher. My grandfather was the classic human medical doctor, general practitioner who lived above his office.
Okay.
And of course, he scared me because every time he came to visit, I thought he was going to give me a shot. Um, and so I would go to the veterinarian with my parents when they would bring the cats in for care. And I can't remember how old I was specifically, but we had a cat that was pregnant, Siamese cat that was pregnant, and developed rhinotracheitis. Now, it's rare in cats that are indoor only cats that we would see that in this day and age, but um, we weren't as well tuned to vaccinations back in the 70s as we are now. And so this cat was going back and forth to the veterinarian. Um, the efforts were being made to help keep mom alive and or alive long enough to have the kitten. And she had one live kitten. She died the next day. And so we basically bottle fed this kitten. So I got an intensive education on veterinary medicine. Now, I could have become a medical doctor, as my grandfather did. My mom probably could have become a medical doctor if it was a different era in human healthcare. But I decided I liked medicine, I liked science, and I liked animals. And I read James Herriot. And I decided I wanted to grow up and be James Herriot, which is pretty hard to do when you're living up outside of New York City in the suburbs and there's not a lot of cows, sheep, goats, pigs, um, but you can dream. So
Yeah.
I decided to work in a veterinary office when I was 15. And, they don't give you the jobs that are nice, like the technician jobs. They give you the grunt jobs. So, oh, and by the way,
Yeah.
this was during the parvo epidemic before we had a parvo vaccination.
Wow.
So
Okay.
for those of you who have ever experienced the smell of parvo, it sticks in your reptilian brain. And so now, 50 years later, the smell of parvo is triggering from my standpoint, from all of the cages that I had to clean from that standpoint. So heavy indoctrination and heavy commitment. And really, I did not ever have a plan B.
Well, the word passion, right? I mean, you, the veterinary community, 95% of veterinarians, it is that passion from a young age where, I mean, parvo did not dissuade you from following your dream. And so, I mean, that really echoes. That's why I love um, being a part of this community now for a decade is that passion is and compassion. You mentioned collaboration too. There are no competitors in the veterinary space for the most part. Working together, it's people that really care and love about what they do. Like I said, you could have been a medical doctor. That discussion, right? Where we go, could I have made 10 times what I make, or whatever, right? That kind of um, where the disparity is in wages, but. No, yeah, in New York. So small animal. I mean, was the passion? Did you ever any large animal?
Oh, yeah. Another story. So the practice I was working for, two veterinarians, one of whom did some horse work on the side.
Okay.
And so back in the 70s, there was a match race at Belmont Racetrack between one of the greatest fillies and the Kentucky Derby winner, or one of the greatest stallions. Um, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I probably will. I believe it was Foolish Pleasure was the stallion and Ruffian was the filly.
Okay.
And they had a match race um, at which Ruffian broke down on the track and had to be euthanized. And I apologize if I got the horses' names right or some of the details were wrong, but I remember listening to the race in the car, I believe, because it was that big a deal back then. I mean, this was the era of Secretariat and just amazing racehorses back then. And I went back to work the next day or whenever I was back, then I was talked to Dr. Mann. His name was Dr. Mann. And I said, why do they have to put horses to sleep on the track? Because, when you don't understand the anatomy and physiology of horses, you don't know how they recover, you don't understand all of the challenges of a horse, it makes it hard to fathom. Mm-hmm. So he explained to me anesthesia and recovery and the nature of the fractures and all sorts of different things. And I said, well, I think I want to become an equine orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
And
Who we
here
got?
I am.
Who do we have there?
Who do I have? This is Bruce.
Hey, Bruce. How's Bruce doing? Love it.
Bruce, when my wife is not home, Bruce is the my company on my lap during these Zoom calls.
It wouldn't be
And so
right if you didn't have it.
he likes to interject himself. Um, so anyhow, so I wanted to become an equine orthopedic surgeon. So I spent one summer working at a racetrack.
Okay.
So the match race was at Belmont, which was a thoroughbred track. I worked at Roosevelt Raceway, which was a standardbred track. Um, I spent a summer, many summers working in companion animal. I did a whole bunch of different things while I was an undergrad as well, but really entered veterinary school within the back of my mind being an equine orthopedic surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
Left veterinary school as an interest in small animal internal medicine because I think I realized my limitations and the fact that even though I may have common sense, I didn't have a lot of horse sense.
You had common sense. That mattered.
Yeah.
The horse is, oh, I mean, you know better than I do. Equine's not an easy business to be in, for sure.
No.
So it's interesting. You know, again, we talked about this before. The New York accent's not really there anymore, right? I mean, you've journeyed across the country. What led you from, New York City to venture out west? And of course, Illinois in the middle with veterinary medicine, and then kept on going. Talk about that journey from New York City.
Well, the journey started as an undergrad at Cornell because it was the state school of California, state school of New York. And I didn't you've been there. You go to an undergraduate program and they put all the A's together in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And so now all of a sudden you can't be at the top of the end of the right-hand side of the bell-shaped curve because somebody else is there. So you're happy just to be on the curve anywhere. So I got the reality check of going from top of the heap to the middle of the pool. And back in the dark ages, getting into veterinary school was, as it still is, very challenging. So I found myself applying to veterinary school with 800 or 1,000 other people who were on the right-hand side of the bell-shaped curve, and I was in the middle. So my dedication and passion to become a veterinarian didn't waver, but I had to find a better way because Cornell, I was not going to get into the veterinary school at Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
So I went around the country looking for graduate programs that were in conjunction with the veterinary schools so that I could get in to the vet school, learn the system, and the best choice, and there was a lot of family members who went to the University of Illinois, was to go to Champaign-Urbana. So I moved shortly after graduation at Cornell to University of Illinois to do a master's program to move myself from the middle of the bell-shaped curve a little bit further to the right, get some more work experience, figure out what I needed to do to get into the veterinary school at Illinois. Eventually got into the veterinary school at Illinois, and then heading into my senior year where you start to look at locations. After 4 years in Ithaca, where it's freaking cold, 6 years in Champaign-Urbana, where it's freaking cold, and I said, you know what? Let's find someplace warm. And so California, I had been in California when I was 18, and I became enamored with it. Been back to visit a couple of times, and I said, you know what? I'm doing the Beverly Hills Hillbillies. I'm going to pack up and move from Illinois to Southern California, and that's what I did. And so it's really been 38 years in Southern California since I graduated, and no looking back. And so it was really a move for weather and opportunity. There were so many job opportunities back here in the mid to late 80s. And so just that was it. It was really weather more than anything else.
You've seen LA sprawl since then. I mean, it's been amazing. Interesting. Again, Kale, as I hear about, I think about some of our clients that did not get into veterinary school right after the undergrad.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I don't know if maybe you've looked at this, Dr. Weinstein, but a lot of those are business owners because, the thing out right now is about grit, right? What's the key to success? Not being the smartest person in the room. It's having grit. It's having determination. It's following your passion. And I think you're proving that out right there with what you just said was that, a lot of people after undergrad don't get in. They might just say, this isn't for me. I'm going to go do something else. But you hung in there, spent more money on school, spent more time in school, which is a good thing. I mean, obviously, you believe in education. Well, that shows we could talk about that. But
Yeah. Are you sitting there thinking that we need to come up with some sort of data?
oh yeah, I'm
Back up
curious.
our-
Is there data
out of all the business owners, are there
Yeah,
like a probability that if you got in a second
I'm curious if
round-
there's any kind of correlation on.
That's an
on
interesting
that.
question.
Yeah,
We can put some data together on that. We
yeah.
got
Have you thought about that or seen data like that? If we talk about a little bit of data, maybe.
No, I mean, I've been so involved with data with the AVMA Veterinary Economics Division
Mhm.
and as a consultant and all sorts of different things that I'm involved with, but I don't think we have, and it would be very interesting to look at the 30 some odd thousand independent hospital owners, and you could even look at all 35,000 companion animal practices, and we could add in the food and equine as well and mixed, and just say, okay, get some data on the owner.
Mhm.
School. Did you get into veterinary school the first time, the second time, the
Yeah.
third time? And try to build a profile of a successful small business owner.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I do think grit and resilience. I mean, there are three major factors that, in my opinion, make a number of major factors that make somebody good in an ownership fashion. Number one is leadership.
Mhm.
Number two is the ability to build a team.
Mhm.
And number three is communication. So, which you can move two and three back and forth because you need to be a good communicator to build a team. And so it's really hard to say what features are identifiable or self-identifiable when it comes down to small business owners. There's probably data to show it in other industries, but I don't think we've done it in veterinary medicine.
I think that not to your book, right? Don't get the
The E-Myth?
myth. Don't get the exactly. You talk about why most practices fail, right? Don't succeed, right? Why they don't succeed. Curious, the ones that succeed might have that common, that grit because um, we talk about that later. Don't want to get too far off topic, but I thought that was just an observation.
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
it's an interesting question to pose for sure.
That's our a good friend and client, Dr. Zach Whitehead, who's Ellisville Veterinary Hospital. Same thing, masters, and then on to he's at the University of Missouri, and got his masters and got into the veterinary school, and he's a business owner of a successful practice in Ellisville, St. Louis suburb. So
One of
some of those correlations, yeah.
One of the parts of the podcast I truly enjoy is since I get to work with so many brand new business owners, like since they're starting up their practice, one of the parts of that is bookkeeping. And so I get to work with those people. And so a lot of times I get the questions of, oh my gosh, this is going terrible. This is going great. Just the venting questions and that during that first month of ownership.
Especially in January when
January
holidays, business has been slow because not as many working days.
And so I guess I would like to hear your perspective of what was becoming a practice owner like.
Mhm.
Like, what is that truly like? And how can people do that and maybe ask themselves the right questions going into that?
Yeah, great part of the journey. We're in California, warm weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's so many different ways to get into ownership. There is the classic way of working for me as an associate. I get old and gray. Wait, I'm already there. And I say, hey, Steve, hey, Kale, how'd you like to buy me out over time? And if you're interested, great. We start to go through the process. If you say, well, I'm not interested because I don't understand the business of veterinary medicine, it doesn't put the brakes on. It just says, well, why don't we start mentoring you on the business of veterinary medicine? And it doesn't put the brakes on because I can always hire a company like yours to do those things that I don't do well.
Mhm.
So I think number one, the different ways to get into the field, there's the associate way, there is buying out somebody else who exists, and there's doing a startup. Now I did a startup.
Okay.
And I had my entrepreneurial seizure, like many of my colleagues have done, where they were working for somebody else, and I was very happy where I was working. I loved the guys, I loved the staff, but I was making somebody else money. And, you know, not all of the policies and not all of the standards were those that I would have had in my practice. And so I said, well, if I can make his practice successful, I can make my own practice successful. Well, it ain't that easy. All right. It's easy being a doctor because that's what we're trained to do. It's not easy to recognize what it is like to put together a team of people with diverse and disparate backgrounds, different levels of education, to provide health care for a very demanding pet owning community and do it well. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say it takes a commitment to being a good doctor, a good leader, a good manager, and learning how to balance all three of those hats in a timely fashion so that you can get the work done, get the life balance that you want, and own a business and not just a job.
So this is where we start derailing the agenda, right? We start finding like some good, let's say not following the order of the agenda, but the veterinary ownership advocate. You have got developed that and working on associate veterinarians to be able to figure out maybe do a startup or buy in. And I think that jumping to today from when you did a startup, are you seeing opportunity like that again? Because I think there was a little bit of period where people thought, I can't do a startup. I mean, how am I going to compete with corporates? You know, I can't even buy a practice because I can't afford to because of the corporates. But where do you see it today in 2020?
I think we're at an inflection point that is so exciting for hospital owners. Whether it is a startup, the banks are very eager to help finance startups. Yes, you have to do your due diligence, and yes, you have to be a good risk, and yes, you have to be in the right location and understand the demographics of the community. It helps to be a good doctor first, so get the skill sets to be a good doctor before you start to open a practice where you have to balance doctoring and managing. I think that there are so many different ways that we could look at buying existing hospitals. A large portion of veterinary hospitals are currently owned by baby boomers, my age and older. And, you know, we should be trying to retire on the beaches of Fiji instead of squeezing anal glands in the rural parts of Missouri.
Right.
But I do think that this is the best time, at least in the last 10 or 15 years, to become an independent hospital owner. There are so many great resources like your company to help with the weaknesses. I think we can compete in pricing now that some of the multipliers for purchasing hospitals have kind of normalized. We have a very eager banking system. You know, the only kind of variable that is a little bit sketchy is interest rates, but I don't expect them to go higher. And so if we can learn to live with what we've got, and we have a pet owning community that is looking for new business models. They're looking for new people to run practices. And I think if you've got a great idea of how you want to see your practice work, there are all sorts of different business models that can be built that aren't what I did. They weren't what my legacy doctors that I worked for did. It's what you do and what you want to do. And with the advice of surrounding yourself with a success team of experts, you don't have to be the expert.
Right.
There's so many resources out there. There is no reason that somebody who has just an even inkling of becoming an entrepreneur can't be successful. Sorry about the long-winded answer.
No,
I
no.
think it's a great answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
couldn't have been a better answer. I agree with absolutely everything you said, and I think there's a lot of people that have that fear of, I don't understand the business, I don't understand the taxes, I don't understand all those things, and those are things you can work through, and those are things that can be taken care of by the people in your group that are strong in those areas. And the question that I had as you were talking was about, the teaching that you do. And is that geared towards, folks that might want to start a practice, to own a business? Is that to kind of give them more resources and education in that area?
Thank you, Kale. That's a wonderful lead-in. I appreciate that. Okay, so the students that I teach at Western are third-year veterinary students, and I survey them in the fall before we get started. And I ask if they're interested in being a hospital owner, if they're interested in doing something else, if they're not really sure. So if I were to look at three buckets, about a third have an entrepreneurial mindset. About a third are probably going to do public health or specialty. They may be owners down the road, but their immediate focus is on getting board certified. And a third are sitting on the fence. And so they're not really sure because they're afraid that being an owner will basically control their lives. So my goal is I use entrepreneurship as the foundation for the class. And my goal is to give them enough information to make an educated decision as to how they can best control their lives in the future and set the direction that they want. In my opinion, it's through owning a business and making money through other people. So I'm all about entrepreneurship, but the first thing I tell them on day one is whether they own a business or not financially, they own a business in themselves. Steve Hermann, Inc., Kale, Inc. Each and every individual in the country is a small business because you will be going in and selling something to somebody. You will be marketing yourself in everything you do, and you have to understand about budgeting, and you have to understand about marketing, and you have to understand everything that we're going to teach them because, especially with the professional, they are their own small business. And even if you're working for somebody else, you still need to run your life as if you're your own small business from a tax protection standpoint and a legal standpoint. So I give them knowledge and information on how to be successful as a veterinarian, as a person, as a small business owner, and hopefully in the 36 hours of contact, they take home a couple of ideas and things that they can use going on down the road. And I think it's fun to watch some of the light bulbs come on when I tell them how much more money they can make as an owner than they will ever make as an associate.
Yeah, that hopefully that does get the light bulb to go off, because at the end of the day, financial independence helps out with that life balance part.
Yep.
So yeah.
The thing I like to say when I'm talking to those people that are prospective business owners, it's like, you're gonna get one paycheck as a veterinarian. If you look at your year, you're gonna get your paycheck as a veterinarian. But if you're a business owner, you get the opportunity at a second paycheck, and you kind of get to dictate what that looks like.
Yep. Yeah, I think you got those thirds where people fall into, and hey, it's not for everybody, right? Because ownership does come with a lot of risk. I mean, you're taking on debt, you're doing things that, it's just like anything. You have a passion for ownership, and some people don't. And I think that's the other thing too. It's like, it's okay if you don't want to have ownership. That's okay too. But you should explore what are possibilities. And I love that it sounds like that class helps that. I think. Let me ask you. What things we hear is that, like, out of universities, like, we taught a business class. They should know these things. They talk about veterinarians. How do they not know about this? We have a business class. It sounds like either one or two things. One, maybe the business class wasn't effective, or two, the veterinary student is so busy in animal medicine, learning about the biology of the animal, how to do surgery, all those things that come along with that, diagnosing, treating. What have you seen that maybe helps to say, yeah, they had a business class and they did learn something, or they just didn't sit down and just check that box off?
Well, in 4 years of veterinary school, you get approximately 120 credit hours of education. The vast majority of it is clinically based. You are tested at the end of your education, and the vast majority of it is based upon diagnosing, treatment, etc., of dogs, cats, pigs, horses, goats, sheep, fish, wildlife, etc. There's a very small portion of the national licensing exam on business. The vast majority of faculty members, and I don't mean to put everybody into a box, but the vast majority of people who teach have not owned a small business. So they can't talk to the reality of what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And since most of the pressures on the students are to focus on being a doctor, I think that that's when the focus is on being a doctor, the business takes up one small synapse in their brain until it's released after graduating and saying, okay, what's next? So my goal is really to find and put a microchip in their brains, metaphorically, I don't actually do surgery, is to put a microchip in their brains that could be reconnected reconnect that hard drive when they're ready. So the most important thing I teach the veterinary students on day one is to get the email address of all of the guest speakers that I have come in, save those, and when they have the need for an attorney, when they have the need for a marketing company, when they have the need for an accountant, when they have the need for an insurance broker, when they have the need for a financial planner, use those email addresses. Because life is not about memorizing the 83 differentials for a limping dog. It's about knowing where to find that information and to whom to refer the dog if you can't come up with the answer.
Perfectly said. I think that's a great way to look at it. No question. It's the connections, right? It's not what you know, it's who you know part.
Yeah, what's the quote? Shoot, it'll come to me in just a minute, but there's a great quote about connections from that standpoint, and my mind just can't come up with it at the moment. Oh, your network determines your net worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I figured if I talked long enough, it would come to me.
We could just say the Zoom froze out for a minute and we can cut it and then come back in, right? And like it slice right together. Not kidding. Hey, I tell you what, we're going to be running up against time here. I feel like we can do a multiple part series and have great conversations. We've definitely been talking about your journey, which I think is important. Like I say, a lot of people, hey, they know you in the community, but I think one thing that the question is what I love about this podcast, Kale, and I love is that we actually get to know people that we already know better because we ask the questions we should have been asking already. But we're usually talking business, not about life as much. So thank you for that time and that journey with that. Yeah, you've got a great book out there. You can still get it, with Michael Gerber, the E-Myth veterinarian, and interesting title too to dive into, or the subtitle they were talking about earlier about how most veterinary practices how they don't succeed, right? And so there's a path to it. It's almost like you don't see them fail, right? Because veterinary practices tend to stay in business, but it's kind of like, do you have a business though, right? Or do you just have a job with a debt service? So that's what's unique about the veterinary community. Where the opportunity is too for advocacy is that a lot of owners out there, they got a business, they have a veterinary practice that could become a business, that could be making money, could be doing better, could be serving the clients better, because it all comes together. It's all those things that you talk about, the 3 different hats, you have to in the book about, what you need to wear, what you are not necessarily need to, but you do wear, need to recognize, right? And be able to separate those things out is when you're looking at the animal. A lot of veterinarians go, I can't look at that as profit, right? Like, well, yes and no, but if you look at it as best medicine, it should equate to profit. But
why is profit a 4-letter word?
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, last I looked, it's 6 letters, but
PRFT. Yes.
yeah, I mean, okay, it could be a 3-letter word if you use net, but yeah, but why is profit a bad word? Is it because veterinarians are so caring and compassionate and we should be giving it away for free and we'll take anything to save a pet's life? I mean, why is profit a bad word?
Well, that's a great question. Why, Dr. Weinstein?
Didn't you ever learn not to answer a question with a question?
What did you just ask? No,
I think go ahead. I want your answer.
yeah, no. So, I mean, I come from the grocery background, right? Profit, I mean, profit slim. Profit did matter. You had to be competitive. You had to give good service, and making a profit was, though, the reason you have a business. You talk about surrounding yourself with good people as a veterinarian, with consultants and all the people you need to be successful. We do the same in our business. We have a business consulting services company, but we also have a business consulting services person for us, for our company. And our consultant coach, she will say a business doesn't have feelings. A business is there for one reason: it's profit. I mean, that's it. Yeah, we can nuance it, right? Like, well, we still have people in there. I care about people, and you get in all that crap. That's bad crap, right? You get in all that stuff. Excuse me, but yeah, back to it. Without the profit, you don't have a business. And so, at the end of the day, just if you boil it down simply from the easiest view as a profit, how you get profit. You said it earlier, though, is by good leadership, having a good team, and communication. Those three things. It takes a lot to do that, to get that profit. But if you're not answering that number one question about why do you have a business, it's not the animals. It's you have a business to generate profit that then can take great care of the animals if you do that right.
I had a conversation to kind of caveat on your point. I had a conversation at one of the last conferences we were at. A veterinarian came up and he said, I keep getting told that I need to make 20% net income. I keep getting told that by everybody. And, my question to you is, why am I that much more important than everybody else in my clinic that I should take a check and then also get 20% of every dollar that comes in? And I said, so it was like a sense of guilt was basically where that was coming from. And I said, I hear what you're saying. And it doesn't mean that because you made 20% net income that you have to use that to go buy a boat or go buy a house or whatever it is that you want to do. Like, think of how generous you could be with that 20% net income. And it's also, you're being a good steward of all those people underneath you to be able to make sure that they're financially sound, that their paycheck is actually backed by a bank account that's full. Like, there's so many things that it's not a guilt thing. You could give it to your staff. It's not like you have to keep it and do it for you, but it's for the financial health of everybody involved, and it shouldn't be this guilt thing tied to a reasonable profit.
No, and it gets into, if you're doing that, then your associate that you want to be the business owner is your practice is bankable. A bank is going to love to lend that practice money, and a lot of it. They're going to lend you a lot of money. And the great thing about buying a successful practice is that, yes, does it cost more than going out, renting 2,500 square feet, putting $250,000 equipment in? Essentially, on paper, yes, but you're already leg up on everything. So that profit is not a 4-letter word. The profit is a 6-letter word, and it is a successful word. So what's our take on it? We have a lot of examples in Kale. That's a great one about that guilt, right, with veterinarians. That's that, for whatever reason. Is it your oath? That you say that you're supposed to take care of every freaking animal? I mean, the United States oath compared to the UK oath, I'd rather have the UK oath or the Canadian oath for you all. It's not as guilty. It's like they're saying basically, take care of the animals you can take care of, not every freaking animal in society. Excuse me for saying it that way, but yeah.
I know we're running up on time here, but I do want your answer. I want to know what you think.
Absolutely.
Well, I think the difference between a job and a business is the profit. You run a business to make a profit. In answer to Kale's statement, I'm all about profit sharing. I think you need to support the team that helped make you that profit from that standpoint. I think a lot of it has to do with guilt. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we watched James Herriot get paid in bacon and eggs back in the 100 years ago in the Dales of the UK. I think it comes from the guilt of clients who have to use discretionary income to take care of that knee surgery or cancer or whatever the case may be. I think it comes from the fact that veterinarians are, and their teams, are routinely very high on the compassion scale. And even talking to colleagues, I think many of us would practice veterinary medicine for a fair and equitable salary if we didn't have to charge clients because we could do what we wanted to do and what the pets needed. So I don't think profit has to be a bad word. I think profit, if done ethically, if done professionally, if done with the best interests of the client and the patient and the team in mind, is great. I just think we get so hung up on the big numbers that we see in the Fortune 500 or S&P 500 or Inc. or whatever the case may be, that we look at profit in such a negative light globally in many ways,
Right.
that we don't want to make money as veterinarians because then we become the bad guy. But
Yeah.
see, if you take that profit and reinvest it in your community, set up a foundation, give back to kids, however you want to do it, but you still need to be rewarded. And you used the term, well, you used the term earlier, but we should be rewarded for the risk of business ownership. And that's what profit does. It rewards us for taking that risk. It rewards us for putting that quarter in the slot machine and coming up with 777s because we did everything right with the right people and we got lucky a little bit, but we did it right.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. That's conscious capitalism, is what that is. Conscious
Yeah.
capitalism, which is needs to be talked about. It's good. It's good. And surround yourself with right people, rewarding them, like Kale said. That matters. And you know what the amazing thing is about rewarding people and doing those things? It rising tide. It's a rising tide.
Yep.
Well, hey, as yeah, getting up on time here. We're gonna have to do this again. I mean, I've got, there's so much to talk about. We didn't even. You got a great podcast with Phil, Peter, and Phil's Courageous Conversations. I encourage everyone. You guys dive into relevant issues today in the right way, and I love that. That's wonderful. You, the veterinary owner advocate, online, getting that going, groups going. You've got Simple Solutions for Vets, DEA. Making sure you're right on DEA. You talk about $16,000. Is it per violation potentially? A lot of money. So you've got that out there, and so I look forward to us collaborating more and continuing to help the private practice owner and the veterinary community. I always like to point out that I have offended some of our friends in the corporate area apparently sometimes, and I don't mean to. I'm not against corporate medicine at all. I'm for good businesses, and there's good businesses in the corporate area. There's good businesses in the private area. There's bad in both too, right? So we're here about, at the end of the day, taking care of people, taking care of pets, and just having a good time. So anything more you'd like to add in today before we end the recording?
No, I always find these podcasts are great because we leave it open because there's so many things to talk about. I'll be a little self-serving and saying go to 3 websites: www.peterandphil.com, peterandphil.com, www.veterinaryownershipadvocates, all spelled out, .com, veterinary ownership advocates, and www.simplesolutionsforvets.com, Simple Solutions for Vets. Those are 3 places that you can find me, or many of the meetings around the country. On LinkedIn is also a good place to find me. And I love sharing opinions. I think I love these grassroots types conversations because I do think even in 2025, when we are so technologically based, it's really about these types of quote unquote courageous conversations that can help us set the direction for the future. So thank you for the opportunity, Kale. Thank you, Stephen, for the opportunity. And as they say at the end of Batman, to be continued.
Absolutely. We will post those websites on our website too. We'll link that out there. Appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate everyone listening today. If you like what we got going on, check us out on our website, betterpodcast.com. If you got suggestions, thoughts, you can give out there to make this more educational, more advocation, and more inspiration. We're here to work together and collaborate. Like us, subscribe. We appreciate everything.
Peace and blessings.
Take care.